guy's head like it's a coconut. And when it gets carried out, there's blood and there's like yellow stuff coming out of his head. And if you show any weakness, you're going to get preyed on. One prisoner was gang raped. They shoved a light bulb in his backside and took bets on who could smash it first. Partly my downfall was my irresponsible violation of Scarface's rule, don't get high on your own supply. He plucked her eyeball out, so it was dangling from the optic nerve. They would stack all my charges and I would get 200 years. And it was that morning when the SWAT team came banging on the door. That was when I knew I was effed at that point. And when they cut my girlfriend off and told me I was gonna face 200 years, I was like, I've had enough. So I planned to just slash my wrist after a guard did a security walk and just bleed out with the cockroaches.
Thank you for coming onto my channel, Shaun, to share your story again.
Cheers, Luke. Thanks for coming on mine as well.
Yeah. Well, I'll be on there. I'll be on there Wednesday and the Wednesday after that as well. So firstly, I just want to say the first time that I came across you was on Banged Up Abroad. Must be about 10, 12 years ago, something like that now. There's a few episodes on there that really stood out to me. One was a couple who got locked up in Mexico. One was the Forget You Had a Daughter, that one. And then obviously one was yours. So I'm just going to kick off straight away with kind of your early story. So can you tell us where your story began? What made you move from the UK to the US in the first place?
Yeah, so growing up in Widnes, I had aunts and uncles in Phoenix, Arizona. So I would visit them, during the summer holidays and stuff. And it just dazzled me. Not just the way that the Americans like roll out the red carpet and treat you and love the English. The sun was shining every day. There was swimming pools in people's backyards. And it just dazzled me, coming from a little chemical manufacturing town in the Northwest.
Well, it's not far from me, Widnes.
What part of Manchester are you? Stockport,
just outside of it.
I did a Waterstone signing out of Stockport once. Lovely people. But me and Wildman, my best mate back then, we used to go to like Manchester Piccadilly, around the canal area, the gay village, and just find all the best dance music, all the rave music.
Did you go, was you knocking around in the Hacienda days?
Hacienda days, but we went to a bit more of the underground clubs at that same time the Hacienda was blowing up. We went like the Conspiracy, Thunderdome on Oldham Road. Like they were a bit more dodgy than the Hacienda.
So what took you out to go and move out there then? Obviously you had the family connection, and then did you decide to up sticks and go and move there and have that life full time then?
My goal was to be an investment analyst after university, and I realized in Arizona it was mostly stockbroker positions. Retail, because there's like a big retirement community out there. There's a lot of wealthy people in Paradise Valley. And I thought, right, I'll just get my foot in the door then, go out there, get a job as a stockbroker, and that will get me, into Wall Street at least. So that's what I did.
So you wanted to end up in New York on Wall Street?
You know what? Originally, that was the plan, but it got derailed.
It kind of went a different way. That leads me on to my next question quite nicely, Shaun. So how did you first get into selling ecstasy, and where and how were you sourcing it?
So when Wildman came over, he was just partying 24/7. He'd invite all the street people into his flat, gangbangers, Native American, transgender, street walking sex workers, Russian mafia, Italian mafia, Chicano gang members. And through this partying 24/7, we couldn't get enough pills from the local dealers. And there was a guy called Acid Joey, and he found out that they were getting them out of LA. So 2 carloads of us went to LA, me, Wildman, Acid Joey, and Seth. All those guys are dead right now. And that's how I scored my first 1,000 or so pills.
I'll tell you what, if there's anyone that's going to hook you up, it's someone called Acid Joey, innit?
Acid Joey looked like he belonged in a music video. He was a stocky Native American, a Navajo, But when he was dancing, his body was fluid, like it was water. He was always on ketamine. He hammered the LSD. And when I saw him dancing, there was a circle of people watching him. And I thought to myself, he's obviously on the good stuff. When I get a chance, I'm going to ask him where he's getting it from. My criminal enterprise, I just started getting them locally. Then for a year or so, I was getting them out of LA. And then after that, I was getting them from Holland, tens of thousands of pills at a time. I had a big operation where we were smuggling them in through Mexico.
How fast did the operation expand then? And at the height of it, how much ecstasy, on average, how much ecstasy were you selling a week?
So, bear in mind, it went from like 96, 97, when I was quitting being in the stock market as a broker, to the SWAT team came May 16th, 2002. So there was like almost 5 years of progression. It wasn't just big overnight. You know, we get like 50 to 100 from the local guys. From LA, we're getting up to like mostly like 1 to 2,000, sometimes 5,000. And then when it went to Holland, like 1999, 2000, we were getting tens of thousands at a time. So once you're getting that many, you don't have to do that many trips. Earlier on, we were doing a lot more trips because it was a lesser amount, but 40,000 would last us, a few months.
So how would those like physically come into you? Were they vat packs? Were they stored inside ornaments? Were they inside were they on persons? How did they actually physically come from point A to point B being you?
All right, there was a stage where they were strapped to people, but when you're doing tens of thousands, it's too many. People were just putting them in pillowcases and putting them on flights. Or if you wanted to be more secure, you could screw them into computer towers. So the 40,000 came in computer towers.
Your book that you kindly sent me. So I've started to read it. Now, on the back, one of my greatest favourite shows of all time, bar none, I think it's the greatest TV show ever made, it's Breaking Bad, right? I think it's the bee's knees. Now, on the back of your book, which is available in all good bookstores, by the way, it says, if you like Breaking Bad, you'll love Shaun's trilogy. Shaun was the Walter White of the ecstasy market in Arizona. Now, that's quite something to have on the back of your book. Now, he had quite a large territory coming out, fictionally, coming out of New Mexico. How big was your territory?
All right. So I saw meth expand in Arizona, and I can understand why you're asking about territories. But it's a different context when you're talking about the market for ecstasy. So it's within the rave scene at first, the dance music scene, the gay bar scene, the strip club girl scene, and the nightclub scene. It's not something like we're covering this part of Phoenix and that part of this and this part of that. It's a club drug.
Right.
So we tried to get these various outlets, the various types of clubs, people supplying, they were buying it through us and moving it through these clubs. At the peak of it, we had people from other states coming to us to take the pills back to the clubs in their states. So the territory expanded from just Arizona to other states. I mean, people coming from Chicago, New York, LA.
To come and get the pills from you?
Yes, because it wasn't that easy to get, especially in the beginning. And we were getting it from LA a lot, but there was a time when LA had a drought and they were coming to us.
So was there a point in time when you were one of the few that was able to get your hands on this highly desired drug?
In large quantities, I would say yes.
Wow. So obviously with all that ecstasy being sold comes lots of money. So how did you explain all of the money that you were making to your family? Did you have some sort of guise?
So my parents came over every, few years, and my sister came over. At the peak of it, I was living in $1 million house on the side of a mountain in a gated, guarded community called Sin Vacas, Tucson, Arizona. When my parents came over, they thought I was I was doing stock market day trading, and they saw that, and they assumed that that's where all the money was coming from.
So they thought that you were smashing it up in the stock market industry,
which
basically.
I was to an extent as well. So it was all getting mixed up together.
But yeah, you were doing well, but you also had a bit of a side hustle going on.
Yes.
How were you living day to day? Were you carefree in this time, or did you have any paranoia, like looking over your shoulder, like from gangs and police and stuff? How was you living?
So towards the end, there was paranoia, but there was a carefree period. And during that period, like, me and my wife would wake up late morning, jump in the swimming pool naked, do a few laps, go down to the Indian restaurant for lunch. In fact, in that Indian restaurant in Tucson, I once dropped an envelope that had $10,000 cash in it for a transaction. And the owner, he loved us so much, he contacted me and said, "You've dropped an envelope. You need to come and pick it up."
I'm just presuming it, but was you dropping the dids as well? Was you getting on it?
Oh my goodness. Partly my downfall was my irresponsible violation of Scarface's rule, don't get high on your own supply. I mean, we and my old man had dropped 20, 30 E's on a weekend, which is ridiculous. It's just showing off. You can only get so high from E. So we were just like, yeah, another one. Aren't we badasses?
Who was you working for over there? Was you working for yourself, or were you working for people above? Was it the cartel, the mafia? Who was it you were working for, if anyone?
So if you're talking about the Ecstasy enterprise, it was classified. It was called the Attwood enterprise by the prosecutor, and she had a number, like letters of the alphabet, for everybody in order of importance. So they had me at the top. They had Wild Woman as number 2 and Wild Man as number 3, which was, Wild Man wasn't happy about
that. Well, did he want to be higher up than Wild Woman?
Yes.
He seemed like a really cool geezer, Wild Man.
Yeah, he came and spoke to me recently. I did a certain thing that they do in South America, let's say, and all my dead friends came and spoke to me, including him, and it was so lovely. I thought it was real at the time. Maybe it was. Maybe that thing is a portal to that. And it's like, you think of your dead friends one-on-one. Nearly all my friends are dead from back then, my male friends. And it was a group conversation. Everyone was laughing together, and they all said that they were proud of me, what I was doing, having a family and having baby Ziggy Wilder, named after Wild Man. And Wild Man was laughing, saying he's still protecting me from above. Ayahuasca was what we did the first night. The second night was peyote, mescaline. And the first night we were in like a yurt, 40 of us. And there was like a altar laid out the front. There was the main person and another person from Peru. And I said, like, I'll just have a small amount. And she said, you need the medium amount. We got to a point where the whole ceiling just turned into a seashell and descended on my head. Yeah, and then I closed my eyes and the visuals hit me, and I would open them and put the brakes on. I would close my eyes and they would hit me again. They were flowing really intense, and I'd open them again. I could put the brakes on. But it got to the point when I opened my eyes, I couldn't put the brakes on. It was like I was on a Big Dipper. And then it just got more intense to the point where I thought my teeth were falling out. I was holding on to my sphincter for dear life, because they tell you it's going to come out either through vomit or poo. And I was holding on for dear life, and I didn't vomit and I didn't poo my pants, fortunately. But there were some moments when I thought I was about to, and I didn't know who I was. All I was breath. And I kept telling myself, just keep breathing to stay alive. Just keep breathing to stay alive. And then all my dead friends came to me. And then I got so paranoid, because they said there's this smoke stuff they can blow in your face.
Yeah.
and it'll calm you down. I'll take you the other way. And I thought, if I put my hand up and ask for that, people are going to look at me, and that's going to stress me out. And right now I'm on overload, visual overload, sensory overload. So I thought the best thing to do is just on my hands and knees crawl out of the tent, and that's what I did. And then for hours I was just staring at the stars outside, and people coming outside asking me to come back in, and their faces are melting off, and I was like, no way, I ain't going back inside, no way.
What was it like when you came out of the trip? Was it relief?
Well, I know these things last on me from previous experience with hallucinogens. So even the next day, I was still going mildly. And it was like I split into two people the next morning. One wanted to go back and one didn't. And the one that didn't want to go back was dominating. But someone spoke to me and I realized I needed to go back right away. And then the next day was like San Pedro mescaline.
Going back into the lifestyle that you were leading with the ecstasy and the distribution and the selling, what actually led to you being caught? And can you describe that moment, the exact moment when you knew, like, shit, game over here? What was that moment like, and what led to it?
All right, so we had a lawyer on the payroll, and he told us that he had someone in the DEA and they were on to me and to stop the importation. So I'd stopped the importation a year before the SWAT team came. I thought I got away with it. Me and my partner were planning to move to LA because my name was so hot in Arizona. But we didn't make our move in enough time. And it was that morning when the SWAT team came banging on the door. That was when I knew I was effed at that point.
Am I right to believe that your parents were in the house at the same time?
No, my parents were at the house in the Banged Up Abroad when some people came looking for Acid Joey, and I pulled a shotgun out. Yeah.
They pulled a shotgun out and your parents were inside the house?
No, I pulled a shotgun on them and my parents saw.
Wow, how did they, because they didn't have no idea what you were doing, did they? So how did they react when you pulled a shotgun out? What was their reaction?
I was like, look, I don't know who these people are at the door, and I've just pulled out the shotgun to, make sure they didn't try anything funny and to get rid of them. But it's normal in Arizona that everyone's got guns, which a lot of people do in the cars and in the houses for home protection. And I kind of like tried to talk them down, but my mum was a bit sketched out after that.
When you actually got put in handcuffs and the walls closed on you, and you realised that, like, this is going to be pretty bad, did you feel like you'd let your parents and family down? Did that dawn on
I
you?
did. It does dawn on you, especially when you got asking for money for a lawyer and you got to have a call with them and tell them where you are. And that was my worst fear. I'd planned it so my mates would bail me out, but the cops were one step ahead and they arrested all of us on the same day or in groups later on. And they seized all my money. I'd flown people from the UK, put money in their names, and they'd seen it through a virus in my computer where all that was. So I was forced to have to speak to my parents about everything and tell them what I'd done and the need for a lawyer. And it was really stressful. And I was blessed to have such good parents because they remortgaged the house. I was facing 200 years. If you don't have a lawyer, you don't get out.
How long were you held before you faced trial? And what was that? Before you went to the Arizona, one of the toughest prisons in Arizona, how long were you in jail before you faced trial?
So I didn't go to trial. I did a plea bargain. So 98% of the cases go to a plea bargain, which is like a negotiation between your lawyer and the prosecutor. And then they kind of like get what you're facing down. They're like used car salespeople. And that avoids an expensive trial. If you do go to trial and lose, because the state's got to pay money, they pretty much hang you if you lose. And it was clear if I went to trial, I was going to get, possibly up to 200 years. So I was fighting my case for 26 months before my lawyer and the prosecutor came to an arrangement where I was going to get, I ended up getting 9.5 years at my plea bargain hearing.
Right. So I've got my next question. Well, so it's about the 200 years then. So were you originally, is it before the plea bargain? were you basically told that if you go to trial, that you would likely face 200 years? Is that where the 200 years comes from?
All right. So my first indictment when I was arrested in 2002 had about a dozen charges, and it had a bail of $750,000 cash only. And then a month after that, the prosecutor charged me with serious drug offender status, which carried 25 to life. So I had that from the get-go. 10 plus charges is like 100 years if you lose at trial, plus 25 to life serious drug offender status. And then a year later, when I went to get my bail reduced, they doubled my bail to 1.5 million. They doubled my charges to 20 something. And they told me that if I went to trial now, as well as serious drug offender status carrying 25 to life, they would stack all my charges and I would get 200 years. Now, there was a guy before me. This is how they made it clear. There was a guy before me who had a drug case out of Tucson. And I think they offered him 15-year plea bargain and he refused it. So he rolled the dice and he went to trial and they gave him 200 years. And the prosecutor was laughing at the next time I went to court, laughing, saying this is gonna happen to Attwood if he doesn't sign a plea bargain.
So you knew then, like you knew that you had to sign it, and
yeah, it was the most stressful time of my life because every month they're putting more pressure on you and telling you you're never going to get out, and the conditions are insane in the jail, and you think you're going to spend the rest of your life like that, and you do want to sign a plea bargain, but you think everyone's tricking you. You get really paranoid. And they're all very sneaky, these prosecutors. And she pulled out every dirty trick in the book on me because I wouldn't cooperate. And it was a really nasty situation. But, I'm not here to whine. The world hates a whiner. I credit her pushing me to the brink of suicidal insanity with crushing that English Shaun person out of me and helping me turn my life around.
Around this time, did you feel suicidal?
So at the beginning of the second year, they moved me to max security. They doubled my bail to 1.5 million. They doubled my charges. Said I was facing 200 years. They indicted my girlfriend. They said there was a prescription pill found on the original SWAT team raid that didn't have a written prescription next to it, which is a class 6 felony. Co-defendants can't visit co-defendants. They knew she was my lifeline. She was visiting me 3 times a week, so they cut her off. I'm living in max security with the cockroaches. They're all over me, crawling all over me at nighttime. I can't sleep. I've got all these bleeding and itching skin infections and bed sores. There's like yellow pus coming out of my eyeball. My eyelid's down here. And there's dead rats in the food. I've lost, I'm on the way to losing about 2 stone because I can't eat the food. Moldy bread, green bologna. Wow. There's just mayhem, violence. I've been seeing or hearing constant violence. Guards are murdering prisoners. I'm thinking anything could happen to me at any time. And when they cut my girlfriend off and told me I was going to, face 200 years, I was like, I've had enough. So I planned to just slash my wrist after a guard did a security walk and just bleed out with the cockroaches. But before I was going to do it, I wanted to say goodbye to my family. What I mean, I was allowed 7 photos. So I'm looking at the photos of my mom, dad, girlfriend, sister, and I'm getting sad thinking my mom's going to get a call saying, your son's just slashed his wrist in a foreign jail and he's dead. And I couldn't bear the thought of putting my mum through that. And that's what stopped me from doing it.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful stuff, man. That's really powerful to hear.
Well, I've done a few TED Talks, and one of them's called "What Facing 200 Years Taught Me About Happiness." And and there's some lessons in that for people.
I advise people. I watched that recently. I advise people go over and check that out. It's got about 2 million views. That. So just on that then, how's your whole experience with basically your life nearly being took away from you in the worst conditions, suicidal thoughts, feeling you've let your family down, you're never going to get out of prison, there's violence everywhere. Your life now, your day-to-day life, have you got a different outlook on it?
Yeah, I've gone through very extreme and varying phases of my life. And my life now, it's all about my family. I wake up, take Ziggy on the lawn, we do some working out together. There's like a little pole that he stands up against and he does his little sets of squats while I'm working out on the grass next to him. And you know, I do my work on my computer and stuff, and he's usually in the room playing next to me or sat on my knee. And then in the evening, you know, we're all just chilling out together. And that's what makes me happy, because if you look back at everything you've ever done in your life and you imagine when you're on your deathbed, what you're going to be proud of. And I'm going to be proud of all the money I made in the stock market and all that trading and all that shit. Am I going to be proud of all the pills I distributed? No, I'm going to be ashamed of that, because I saw the horror of what drug use leads to in the jail. And I realized I put people on that road of drug use. And that's motivated me, you know, to do detox in the schools and try and turn my life around. And when Wildman and all my mates came to speak to me from the dead, you know, the thing they were most proud about me was having my son and having, you know, being with Jen and having my son and being still alive. They were like, "You're like the only one of us, the last of us that's still alive. You just got to make the most of it and enjoy everything you've got. And we're living through you, through what you're doing." This is kind of thing they were telling me.
You're carrying the torch now, aren't you? With this new life.
But no pressure, because when I was in my 20s, it was like, I got to be a millionaire by 30, or else I'm going to kill myself. That discipline, that mercenary attitude that like Pablo Escobar had. And now I just wake up and I'm just blessed and I'm happy, and I just go with the flow of the day, and things are just evolving organically for me. And I'm not saying I got to have this or that or be this or that or live in this or that anymore. It's shallow. When I was facing 200 years, I realized when all those material things were stripped from me, it was painful. Losing my girlfriend, losing my $1 million house, sports car, jacuzzi, swimming pool. Because I was so materialistic, it was getting wrenched from me, the attachment. When I lost my girlfriend, that was getting detached from me. And after the pain, I wrote to my sister, "I feel like a mad monk in a cave. I'm so happy right now because I'm not stressed out or grasping or thinking about all that shit anymore." And then I went on to realize that happiness is in your heart and what your thoughts make it. You don't need to have jack shit.
So getting everything getting almost stripped bare, metaphorically, kind of took away all those materialistic pressures and desires and made you appreciate the small stuff. I'll tell you what, I've got a daughter, and before she was around, it can sometimes be hard to find purpose, and then as soon as you have your child, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, but as a man, I think a lot of men can relate to this. That when you do have your first child, it just changes your outlook and it changes you as a person, doesn't it? Things that were important are nothingness.
Absolutely, man. Complete and utter nothingness, complete and utter horse crap. And I'm not knocking success and having nice things. What I'm saying is, if that becomes the meaning of your life, as it did in my case in my 20s, it's a pretty shallow philosophy to live by. And it caused me to melt down because I was just so focused on having all that, never taking time out for breaks. You know, it's all about family, relationships, friends, good times, spreading the love. That was the other thing. The day after the ayahuasca, I just woke up so full of love and just thinking about, you know, one of the things I feel blessed about is the people that contact me constantly, podcast guests, viewers, and just tell me how either my story or someone's story they've watched has affected them. Yeah. Some of these people write big, long emails saying they were on the verge of doing something tragic to themselves, but watching Wildman talk about the shit he was up to in Mexico gave them such a laugh. It stopped them from doing it. Things like that.
Well, it doesn't get much better than saving someone from doing something silly, does it? Nothing better than saving someone's life.
It's a nice feeling that what you're putting out there is impacting people. And you just, you know, you only hear a fraction of how people are getting impacted through the people who communicate that with you. You don't know fully, you know, how many other people have been, but that's a nice feeling as opposed to just racking up stock market trades and all that shit.
And selling dids.
Yeah.
So you was locked up in one of the toughest prisons in Arizona. You've briefly touched upon the conditions, the food, and the violence, and the guards, and every day kind of living in fear, I suppose. What was that first day like walking into prison? Were you shitting it? Or did you have some kind of notoriety whereby you had kind of respected in that criminal world and people didn't target you? What was it like?
All right, so I just want to clarify that in America, jail and prison are two different things.
Yeah.
For the first 26 months, and hard time covers that period, that's the most violent, graphic, hard-hitting 26 months of my life. The Maricopa County jail system was run by Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who prided himself on being America's toughest sheriff. And it wasn't just the likes of the neo-Nazi Aryan Brotherhood murdering the prisoners. It was the guards murdering prisoners. And people can Google Scott Norberg, Brian Crenshaw. They murdered a blind prisoner. They murdered mentally ill prisoners. They were like wolves just going in and killing people. And they didn't give a F. And there was no consequences for them. Some of the guards that were found responsible for murdering prisoners in federal court were given promotions by the sheriff afterwards.
Promotions?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, now.
So going in that first day, they come up to you, whatever race you are. In my case, it was the AB guys, the Nazis. Hey, we want a word with you, Wood. Wood's like mate for white boy. And then you go in the cell and they explain all the rules. Someone calls you a punk, a bitch, or hits you, you got to fight them. Can't sit at the table with the other races. Can't get pally with the guards. You got to take showers and have good hygiene. You violate any of these rules, they just smash on sight.
So what was your first day like then? Did you get approached and asked, do inmates and like yourself, do you immediately get asked what you're in there for?
Yeah, there's a charge check and a heart check. So they say, hey, Wood, get in that cell over there. And you go in. And I'll never forget that day. It was intense. They got like Hitler and Swazis all over them. And they're just staring at me like they want to kill me. And they're like, what you in for, Wood? Now, my charge is, it's a bit complex for me because I'm new at this. Crime syndicate, conspiracy, continuous criminal enterprise. It's all on a printout. But I don't have no idea what this stuff means. So I say, I don't know what my charges mean. And then they got me against the wall about to attack me. What do you mean? All your charges mean? Are you a chomo? Are you a chomo? I didn't even know what a chomo was at that point. So that they made me pull my charge sheet out and they read it. And they liked that my bail bond was $750,000 cash only.
They found that pretty cool.
They found that cool as, and they were like, are you guys the mafia? Were you guys murdering people? And I'm like, no, raves. We were all happy on Ecstasy. We weren't killing anybody, blah, blah, blah. And that was it. And, you know, they found that Wildman was with me. I think I was in Tower 6 and he was in Tower 2. And he was a maniac. There's a guy called Bruno who was in there with us, with the Italian mafia. He was an enforcer. And Bruno saw my Banged Up Abroad episode a couple of years ago and got in touch. After all those years, I've written about him in Hard Time. And he was like, yeah, we were in awe of Wildman. He was just a one-man maniac. But everybody had much love and respect for him, but you didn't know what he was going to do from minute to minute.
Was he a tough guy?
So Bruno, I've interviewed him 4 times if the viewers want to check this out on my channel. I arranged for Bruno to meet Wildman on the back row in the Catholic Mass in the jail. Because what happened was these Italian mafia guys, they asked me who did I want as my cellmates. And they were ordering the guards around. The head guy was outside with the guards at night smoking and giving them orders. So they moved all my co-defendants in with me. And there's one co-defendant, Joey Crack, he's dead now too. God bless him. Every night he was telling the Italian mafia guys stories about Wildman from his time on the streets with him. And they were all just laughing their heads off at all this crazy stuff. And they were like, you got to arrange to meet. So Bruno sat down next to me in Catholic Mass. Wildman sat down on the other side. And they shook hands and almost launched me out of my seat because they're so strong, both of them.
Did you have to follow any kind of politics and house rules whilst you were in the prison?
You've got all the guards rules and you've got all the gang rules, and those rules are opposed, and you're in a video game, and you got to get through it somehow without increasing your sentence or getting your teeth knocked out. I saw so many people's teeth get knocked out and just bounce on the floor. I saw a guy with his leg pointing in the completely wrong direction. There was a mentally old man. I don't know what they did to him, but as I walked past him, blood just squirted out of the back of his head. Nearly every day, there was heads getting smashed into toilets and bodies getting thrown against walls. And I just got used to the sound of it. So you've got to get through it. Everything you think about in your everyday life's out the window. All your brain is laser focused on is raw survival. Who can harm me? Who can help me? Who can I make alliance with? Who can I be friends with? How can I avoid the dangers?
Was you attacked?
So I only got in a couple of situations. I never got my teeth knocked out. I never got my bones broken. There was a time when I got moved over to medium security in my third year. I didn't know anybody. My cellmate was a serial home invader torturer. And he didn't like me from the get-go because I was a fish. He wanted an old condom of him doing his tattooing and his heroin injections. So he had his mate attack me just when I was walking happy as can be down this corridor to see my mum and dad who'd flown 5,000 miles to see me. Right away, this guy starts kidney punching me. You got to hit back. All the prisoners are watching. He was like 24 stone, something like that. It was like hitting a big bag of cement. I did what I could, but smashed me up, knocked me down. Go to visit all injured. Mum's asking what's wrong. I couldn't say. She's already a nervous breakdown over my situation. And then the guy who was my cellmate, he's showing me the padlock he's going to smash my skull in with. I managed to get moved out of that cell. He's throwing batteries at me for a couple of weeks afterwards until I got a cellmate who was big, had some words, and it stopped after that. And that cellmate then introduced me to a multiple homicide mafia murderer called Two Tonys, who took me under his wing. I wrote his life story, Two Tonys, the mafia philosopher.
Wow.
And once he took me under his wing, I didn't get sweated again after that.
That's a good friend to have, isn't it?
Yeah, but sadly he died in 2010 from liver cancer from his own drug taking.
You got any PTSD from this?
You do when you first get out. You have nightmares, you have flashbacks. But I did meditation, yoga, karate, endless fitness classes. There was a point where I was going to the gym like up to 3 hours a day doing classes and stuff. And I believe, and through the many interviews we've done with people who are into martial arts or boxing or fitness, people who've been to prison, that's the key to staying out and having a healthy mind, because you're making the endorphins cascade in a natural way. Yeah, you could take drugs, which is a shortcut. But if you do it the natural way, you're not going to end up with a SWAT team coming to your house.
Yeah. How did you pass the time? What was you doing day to day?
When?
How were you? When you was in prison for 9 years, how were you passing the time?
So I served just under 6, and you've got to get into a routine. So you get your workout routine on. In the jail, there's no weight. We had pink socks and pink boxers. We'd tie our pink socks under the metal grid stairs and do pull-ups, the broom and the mop buckets, or putting big heavy bucks in something. Later on, I had a guy who was my personal trainer. He was called Iron Man. He was a martial arts guy. He's the one who told me to join a dojo when I got out and do the karate and stuff. So the fitness is a big part of it. I managed to read over 1,000 books in just under 6 years, a lot of philosophy and psychology.
Wow.
That really helped me go inside myself and address the root causes of why I got involved in crime, and helped me. The reading became the lifeblood of my rehabilitation.
Right.
And then my blog, my writing was smuggled out the maximum security Madison Street jail starting in 2004 by my aunt, typed up, emailed to my family in Widnes. And people can still read those original timestamped journal entries documenting, the cockroaches, the gangs murdering people, the guards murdering people, the dead rats in the food, all that kind of stuff. It's called John's Jail Journal, JONS, Jail Journal.
John's Jail Journal. Check that out. Everyone check that out. I heard in Bang Up Abroad that you all have to eat in your own races. What would happen if somebody would not abide by that? Did anyone even dare to do that?
All right, I'll give you an example then.
Yeah, give me an example.
Early on, I was in the day room doing the dips and stuff, working out with a guy called Sniper. He was a La Victoria Tempe gang member at Chicano. So Chicano is a Mexican American, someone descended from Mexico, born in America. So the same Nazis who asked me about my charges appear at the cell door again, and they're like, "Hey, we want a word with you, Wood." And I look over at Snipe, and he's like, "Yeah, go talk to your people." So I go into the cell, and I'm like, "What's up?" And they said, "Take a look around the day room, Wood." I look around the day room. I'm like, "Yep." Do you see any of the white boys working out with the other races? I'm like, "Nope." You got a lot to learn, Wood. Now go finish your workout. That was them being polite, man.
Yeah.
I saw people come in. There was one guy, I don't know what his claim was, but I can't remember exactly. He looked white, and said he was black, and he was sitting with the blacks, and he ended up getting attacked and rolled up. So it's life and death, and then you can't play around with these rules.
You just got. Is it a case of like you just got to whatever the rules are set as, you just stick to them. If you wanna get out of there alive, stick to the fucking rules.
Unless you want to get your head smashed into the wall and your teeth knocked out, just like that, it's all over for you. Yeah.
What was the worst act of violence that you ever saw in prison?
Ever saw or ever heard about?
Let's do both.
All right, let's go with heard about then. So, prison rape is quite prevalent in America for some reason, and you have to go to a rape class to get taught how not to get raped. You watch a video and there's predators, and if you take food, they say you got to pay for it or you're going to get stabbed. You got to go in that cell and do whatever that guy says. I'm just setting the table here. So anyway, I met someone who was in the Arizona prison system decades before me, and this story was confirmed off other prisoners. And this person was a debt collector from the AB, and these gangs are blood in, blood out. And this person ended up getting gang raped multiple times. They shoved a broomstick in his body, raped him while he was unconscious. And I said, "How do you know what was inserted into your body?" And the person said, "When I went to the toilet afterwards, I could tell by what came out. I sat in myself for weeks waiting for the scars to go away. I got moved to another yard, but the same thing happened. They beat me up, raped me, used me as a sex toy, a prostitute, a punk. There's no recourse. There's no one to talk to. The victim's labeled a rat, a punk, and considered less than human." And I said, "Well, how did you stop it then?" And the person said, I started fighting back. You've got to be ruthless." And that was understatement. I learned from other prisoners what this person had done. The next 2 times the gang came to rape this person, he plucked her eyeball out, so it was dangling from the optic nerve.
No,
and he did that twice. Now, I didn't even think that was possible when I first heard that, but it was confirmed by other people. And, doing karate for almost 10 years, as you go up the ranks, they teach you a strike called bird beak strike. You just go in and the eyeball's hanging out from the optic nerve. When you do that, the fluid coating the brain can come through. There's a lot of complications that can arise. Yeah, the eyeball can go back in. It can be normal, or you could be screwed up, or you can even die. So they classified this person as extremely dangerous and moved on to some of his friends. One prisoner was gang raped. They shoved a light bulb in his backside and took bets on who could smash it first. And that prisoner killed himself afterwards. Another prisoner, they grabbed a shovel from the work crew and they held him down and they cut his head off with the shovel. And they positioned it in an area. They positioned it in an area of the prison where the rival gangs would see it. And again, that was the AB, to make the point they were the most violent and dangerous. There was a TV program called 60 Minutes, I think, in America in the 1970s or 80s when this stuff was happening. And they said they classified Florence Prison as the most dangerous real estate in the whole of the country at that time. There was no cameras. The guards would have people fight to the death, or just take them out to the desert and have them dig their own grave and shoot them in the head. That's what it was like, man. This was before cameras and the modern industrial warehoused prison system from mass incarceration and war on drugs.
Did you ever see anyone get killed yourself?
So early on, I saw a guy in the shower. They thought he was a chomo, and the gang beat him up. And then this guy was like, "You didn't beat him up good enough," because we can still hear him whimpering. And it's like he's smashing this guy's head like it's a coconut. And when he gets carried out, there's blood and there's like yellow stuff coming out of his head.
That must stay with you. That as to
There's
see
nothing
that.
you can do. There's nothing you can do about it. These people who look dead just get carried out on a stretcher and you just never see them again. And if you show any weakness, you're going to get preyed on. And they came up to me right away and they said, "You've got to get that shock off your face, or else you're going to get preyed on." And if you look at my passport photo or driver's license photo when I got released, I'm just blank, just dead eyes. You can't show any emotion.
So moving on to when you were released, what was that feeling? If you could describe that feeling, what was that feeling like when you first exited that prison? The prison was behind you. You were walking forward. What was that like?
I was walking forward into the hands of federal deportation prison officers who then transported me to federal deportation prison, where I couldn't be told my release date for security purposes, where I was then housed for 2 to 3 weeks. And then I was transported on Conair across Arizona and California, put on a flight from LA to Gatwick. There's videos of me at Gatwick Airport, or is it Heathrow Airport? I can't remember. Hugging my mum and dad's sister, and they're all crying. And my sister, on the drive away, she's showing me her phone and explaining what texting is.
Oh, you wouldn't have known, would you?
No.
No way. That's crazy. Well, that's a fascinating story about your time inside. I want to talk about where you've come. We've talked about where you've came from and the ecstasy and doing the prison time, and I want to talk a little bit about where you've arrived to now, which is you're writing your books again. This is one that you've kindly sent me, so I have made a start on that. And the YouTube channel, which obviously I am a guest on weekly. So I want to ask you, what first made you launch a YouTube channel, and what did you originally set out to achieve with it?
All right, so my activism started. We wanted to expose the conditions in Sheriff Joe's jail, and when my aunt was, smuggling my writing out of the jail, that's where it all began. That was 2004. So my year of release was 2007. So the YouTube channel started in 2007. And I think if you look back, we were the first prison blog and prison YouTube channel. I think I've got a video in 2008, how to survive Sheriff Joe Arpaio's jail. That was one of the first prison videos on YouTube. So since then, we've interviewed over 1,000 people. Wow. I'm blessed to have such an amazing team, including Ron, and you yourself have recently been contributing, and I appreciate that, man. And Jen was my co-host after Wildman, and we ended up getting together. She kept showing up to work in these sexy knee-high boots, doing podcasts that I couldn't take my eyes off.
It's a great channel. It's got a lot of variety, and I just want to say from a personal note. So I think I've done about 3 shows now with Ron. I did one on 1.5, because I came in halfway through the McCann theories, and then we started up the Moors murders on a Wednesday. So we're doing that this Wednesday, and I have a lot of fun. A lot of fun with Ron. He seems like he's a real kind of cool geezer. So you've got some good people working on that channel, and I am enjoying doing my doing my bits and pieces with Ron on a weekly basis, and obviously I know John Wedger as well. So yeah, I think that the channel's at a good place. Personally, what's been the biggest case that you've covered on your channel?
Oh my goodness. So out of all of the whole true crime genre, the biggest case was the Epstein case, because we had about 60 million views on that, and we were the tip of the spear for a bit until we got banned from covering it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting that you got banned from covering it.
Yeah, it caused mayhem in my life, man. I got a criminal record and everything.
Shit, really?
Yeah, yeah.
I've noticed. I'm not even going to say the names, just because the algorithm might not like me saying the names. Okay, because you've done YouTube a lot longer than I have, but in my experience, like you mention a name or another channel or whatever, and they're quite influential. The algorithm won't like it. So I've noticed that people that get influential on YouTube or whatever platform it may be, if they start to go into the millions and they talk about controversial things sometimes tend to happen whereby if they get too much of a voice, they want to, and that voice may empower people to be stronger. It may educate people to not maybe listen to a narrative that's being pushed. Do you think there's a bit of a problem with that? The bigger you grow, the more of a target you are to be shut down, and that's without naming any names.
They usually just take you out with the lone gunman. If you look at Martin Luther King, JFK, Malcolm X, but now they try to destroy your reputation, with the exception of, the attempt on Trump recently. So Russell Brand is a perfect example of what you were just talking about. He's exposing Big Pharma, the military-industrial complex, some of the most powerful people in the world. He's calling them out. And he got demonetized on YouTube because of that. What gives the UK government the right to send a letter to Google and say you got to demonetize this guy who's not convicted of anything?
No.
So they use the law, and there's been a proliferation of law concerning speech and what you can and cannot say or post online. And it's a catch-all whereby they can just employ that at any time to shut anyone down or throw them in prison or demonetize them. And that to me is completely obscene.
Of course. Do you ever worry that obviously your channel's growing at the recording of this video? You're probably quite conscious of the fact that you're on the road to 1 million, which would be a brilliant milestone. So the channel is growing all the time. Does that worry ever come into your mind that they're going to close you down?
So I study YouTube's community guidelines religiously. But if I'm watching someone on my channel who I'm a bit worried they've said something that's gone beyond that, I'll just point out, here's what it says in YouTube community guidelines, and we've got to delete that, because you can delete through the editor function after someone said something on a live stream. Just get rid of something as fast as possible. So I'm quite comfortable in my understanding of YouTube's community guidelines, what I can and cannot say. But saying that, if they do want to shut you down, it's going to happen. And it just comes in quite arbitrary, because they don't say 6 minutes into this video, you said this, which violated our community guidelines, therefore you've got a strike. They just say cyberbullying. You got like a 3-hour video, cyberbullying. What did I do wrong? You just don't know. So it's a system that if they want to take you down, they just put the algorithm on your case, and it looks at everything you've done in far more detail and starts to strike you.
I've also noticed as well, you have to be quite careful and smart with how you title videos as well. Have you noticed that?
AI is watching every video title. It's watching every word you say, listening to, and whatever you put on your thumbnail, it's reading it.
Oh, I wasn't aware of the thumbnail being scanned over.
Yeah,
right.
It's reading and watching everything you're putting on YouTube, and it's calculating a score, and it's determining whether to promote your videos or not. So the more the more guests swear, the more guests talk about drugs with their real names, my score is going down for my channel, and specifically those videos, and the algorithm is not pushing those videos out as much. YouTube has made that clear.
Which guest? You've done 1,000 interviews, over 1,000.
Over 1,000 people, yeah.
So which one guest stands out the most out of everyone you have interviewed? You got one.
I've got to say, Wildman, he was my best friend from childhood. He came and spoke to me recently with all of my dead mates, and he said he's still protecting me from above. His family have said that he lives on through the videos. Shout out to his cousin Hammy, and they really enjoy watching him and hearing all of his old crazy stories. And all the stuff that he did in Mexico that I didn't even know about, that he spoke to camera and did all these stories on YouTube. It's just there's so much to his story. It's endless. And he did it with a sense of humor, a dark sense of humor, lack of political correctness. He'd just say anything. So, I've got to put Wildman at the top, man, because of much love and respect I have for him.
Well, I'm now gonna check out the videos of Wildman. Shaun, I want to thank you for coming on to my channel, sharing your story again. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions that you may not have been asked before. Everybody, thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to this channel, Break the Ice, if you like the content. Like, share, and you know what I always say, comment the video. Let's get interactive. Subscribe to the channel, and also Shaun Attwood's channel. If you're not already subscribed, go over to Shaun Attwood's channel. Check out the videos. There's loads of fascinating videos on there. Subscribe to the channel. I will be there on Wednesday with Ron for part 2 of the Moors murders. Shaun, thank you for your time. Thank you for the book, which I'm going to get. There it is. I'm going to get stuck into. And yeah, I appreciate you coming on the channel tonight.
Luke, it's been a great pleasure, and congratulations on your own success, and long may it last, my friend.
Thank you, mate. Have a good night, and peace out to everybody. Cheers, Shaun.